Good morning. I'm not sure if anybody can hear me, but I can't hear anything. Is the sound on?
Yes, we can hear you, Councillor Cartmell. We're just waiting a few moments to get everyone set up.
Okay.
But if
Thank
you want
you.
to keep talking, you're welcome to. I like hearing your voice.
I just don't want to miss the start. I have questions on 5.1, but I can't select it, so I don't want to miss the beginning.
I'll do that for you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to call this meeting to order, and we'll do the roll call for committee members. Councillor Knack,
Good morning.
Councillor Rice,
Good morning.
Councillor Rutherford,
Morning.
and Councillor Stevenson.
Good morning.
And we're also joined by Councillor Wright, Councillor Principe, Councillor Tang, and Councillor Jens. And we do have folks online as well. Councillor.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Paquette. And I understand Councillor Cartmel is online too, right?
Yes, good morning.
Good. Is anyone else online?
Good morning, Councillor Salvador here.
Thank you.
And Councillor Hamilton here. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Okay, our first item is the election of vice chair. Councillor Neck, you have some thought?
Oh, yeah, sure. That sounded good too. I'll nominate Councillor Stevenson for vice chair.
Stevenson to be nominated for vice chair. Any objections? We need approval, right? We need to vote.
Yes.
So any other nominations? Seeing none, please vote for Councillor.
Then I will now move that we
Just hold
accept
on.
that. Yeah, because I think the nomination has to be accepted. Then
Oh,
we
yeah, of course. Councillor Stevenson, do you accept the nomination?
I do accept the
Cool.
nomination.
Thank you so much for that. Cool.
And now I will move that Councillor Stevenson be elected as vice chair of executive committee.
Okay, and so please vote to accept Councillor Stevenson to be the vice chair of executive committee.
We have the votes.
Good. Display the votes. That is carried. Congratulations, Councillor Stevenson. All right, the adoption of the agenda. So we need to adopt the agenda. Oh, we need to, okay, adoption of the agenda. Councillor Knack.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move the adoption of the agenda. I don't believe there are any noted changes, so as noted.
Yeah, well, there's one that we would have to exempt that first in order to reroute it to back into council. Okay, approval of the minutes, none.
Sorry, we need to vote on.
So adoption of the agenda, please vote.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Please vote.
We have the votes.
It is, I don't see it. Can you display the votes, please? Yeah. That is carried. Thank you. And adoption of approval of the minutes, none. Protocol items, none. Select items for debate.
I'd like to.
Councillor Knack? Sorry. Councillor Rutherford? Oh, Councillor Stevenson. Okay.
I'm so sorry. I'll select item 6.1, please.
6.1. And we do need to select 5.1. So, Councillor Knack, can you
Yeah,
select that?
I'll select 5.1 and then also on behalf of Councillor Hamilton, 7.1.
7.1. Okay. Do we need to select bylaws at this time too? The 6.2?
You don't have to select, no.
We don't have to. If we don't select it,
It gets passed.
it gets
Yep.
passed. Okay. All right. Cool. So
I'll
we have
move all-
selected 5.1, 6.1, and 7.1. Okay.
I'll move all remaining items, which I think is just 6.2 at this point.
Okay. And we need a second for that? No, we don't. Okay. So please vote to accept the rest of the items.
We have the votes.
Please display the votes. That is carried. Request to speak. None. Request for time specific on the agenda. None. Councillor inquiries. None. And 4 is none. Request to reschedule reports. So On 5.1, what I understand is that the revised due date that was approved at the agenda committee is wrong, right?
So there was an error,
Yeah.
and the department would like the date moved to December 13th.
So so it'll come back to December 13, but in order
In
that
order-
to happen, we need to send it back to council
Correct.
to correct the date.
Yes.
Okay. So Councillor, I know Councillor Cartmel, you had some questions on on that, but it's going to be sent back to council for a new date. Are your questions still relevant to that, or?
Well, I will confess to some confusion now. So it's going back to council.
To set a
To
new
cons-
date?
It's going back to council when?
Which council meeting would it go to?
November 22nd.
So go to November 22nd.
But at November 22nd, all we're talking about is the delay in the report. My concern is that we need to discuss this report before we get to budget, in my view. And I just want to be assured that we actually get to discuss the content of the report and the plan for that site generally, either before or at budget.
So what would that process be?
So I think I understand the councillor's concerns, and I think the intent would be to have that discussion as part of budget.
Even though the report is delayed to December 13th?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so our understanding is that December 13 will be supplemental budget adjustment discussions, and so
Okay.
the objective is to have the report ready to support that conversation happening at SCB.
Okay, got
That's
it.
why we wanted it moved up from Q1
Oh, I see.
2022.
Got it.
So-
And because our budget deliberation is scheduled till, I think, 17th?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, got it. Does that work, Councillor Cartmel?
I think so, yes, thank
Good.
you.
Okay, good. So we can, do we need a motion to send that back to council?
We do.
You do.
Okay, Councillor Knack?
And just to be 100% safe, I'll move that we recommend, for sending to council, that we have a revised due date of the supplemental budget adjustments. And then that way we can not be tied to a specific date if for some reason. So I'll just move that to make it very clear, because I heard that we want to bring it forward with budget, so let's just tie it to budget and not a date.
And we're able to do that, right? It doesn't have to be a specific date, it has to be part of the budget process. Okay, good.
We
Yeah.
can.
Okay, good. All right. So Councillor Knack, would you move that, please?
Yeah, that's what I'll move. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so please vote to send this. No. Councillor Rice, do you have questions on 5.1 being referred to back to council?
Yes, I do have the question for that.
Okay.
Based on the information I just heard from Councillor Carmel, I do believe this one needs to give us more time and before budget adjustment. And then I think should not be the item just right before the meeting, should give us some time and to do something. And then, so that is my question. And what I heard, Councillor Lack suggested to just put a tied with the budget meeting, or so if I miss something, and let me know. But I do think, and based on yesterday's experience, I do have concern. And as a new city councilor, we need time to process information and then to have sufficient information and understanding, and for us to make any decision. I do want to bring that concern forward again.
Yeah, got it. So a report will be released prior to being discussed at a particular budget
Yes,
supplementation?
Your Worship, and while I understand the point, I also understand the concerns that the councillor has, and we're trying to work on some of those before we get to budget. And of course, originally this was gonna go in quarter one of 2022, so we're trying to
Bring
do
it-
all we can to advance it, so
Yeah.
there can be a budget discussion, but that means we're gonna have less time to do it. The only other alternative would be to delay until quarter,
Yeah.
where we can have lots of detailed information, but then you won't be able to think about it until the
Got it.
spring budget, so.
So you're already trying to speed it up
We're
as much
trying to
as,
speed it up
as
because
much as
we're
possible.
aware of the concerns, but if speeding it up is gonna be a problem for council, then, I don't want to rush it either. But-
Okay, got it.
Yeah, I do understand. I appreciate that. And so from process perspective, we will want to speed up. And however, and to make a responsible decision and for our people, I do believe that time is needed. And specifically based on yesterday's experience and regarding that mask bylaw, and then I do want to strongly voice this concern out.
Absolutely, concern is noted, Councillor Rice, and so my understanding would be that you will try to get it out as quickly as possible.
We'll do our best.
Yeah.
The problem we have is just time,
Time,
so,
yeah.
I
Good.
mean, to get the most fulsome answer, I would say Q1 2022.
Yeah.
And then it gets considered in the spring or fall budget.
Okay, cool.
But I'm trying to respond
Yes,
to
got
the
it.
concerns of council, so we'll do our best. And I guess I would say, Your Worship, that once we provide what we have, and we'll do it as quickly as we can, if it's deemed by council that they need more information, then you can ask us to come back at that point.
Okay,
perhaps.
good.
And that way we respect both concerns.
Okay, good, thank you. So please vote to refer this meeting back, Councillor Rutherford, sorry.
Thanks, Councillor Knack. So you had my back there.
Gotta look at that screen.
So I guess the question that we're really asking today is, do we want this to be a part of the budget adjustment, or do we want it to be part of that budget cycle for the next year?
Yeah, and what I would say, Councillor, though, is that we can try to get it in the budget. If you look at the report and don't have enough, then you still have the option of making it the next budget cycle.
So putting it towards the December date gives us more options of either the adjustment or deferring it to the next budget cycle.
Exactly. I mean, I'm not
Okay.
sure we need to defer today. We're going to do our best. And if you don't like what you see on the 13th or in the
Yep.
report before it, you can always say, bring it back later.
But
So
if it's coming to council on the 13th anyway, it would be out 2 weeks, the report would be available to us 2 weeks before that.
That's correct, yeah.
And we would have time to ask administration questions.
Exactly, yeah.
Perfect,
So-
perfect.
And then it keeps our options open.
Perfect, thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Rutherford. Councillor Cartmel?
Yeah, I'm sorry to belabor this, but I just wanted to respond to Councillor Rice's comments. The conversation around the Ambleside yard, and particularly the snow and ice strategy related to that yard, has been going on for 3 or 4 years. So this recommendation, the latest suggestion was for Q1 of 2022. This particular report has been kicked down the road several times now. So my considerable concern is that we have to stop delaying and start the discussion on this point. It's been delayed long enough. It's not particularly complex in my view, and so we need to proceed with this conversation with due haste so that we get on with making decisions.
Got it. Thank you, Councillor Cartmel.
May
Okay.
I respond to that question?
Councillor Rice, absolutely, but we don't want to spend, go ahead, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Rice.
So I just want to understand the reason why, and then it's kicked a few times, delayed a few times already. And then because right now, and so many things, new council just started, we are still under the process of onboarding. And why something delayed a few times, and right now we need pushed on the beginning of a few weeks. And during this time period, we're still under the process to be onboarding.
So my understanding, Councillor Rice, is that if we do not debate this as part of the budget discussions, then there won't be any opportunity for a budget to be allocated during the supplemental capital budget, right? So Councillor Cartmel wants to have a debate on this as part of the budget, so money can be allocated if council members agree to do so. If we keep the initial first, second quarter date of 2022, then there would not be an opportunity to attach a budget to this year or 2022, it would have to be part of the 2023 to 2026 cycle, whatever that 4-year cycle is. That's what the issue is. That's why Councilor Cartmel is trying to bring it forward quicker than what administration would have recommended.
Because it's related to the budget, and then specifically we have over 1 year lap, and between the last budget and then the new budget for 2023-26, I do believe, and this is a decision and needs regarding the budgeting, we have to be very careful and to make the decision with sufficient information
Yeah.
and fully understand the issues, and then
Yeah.
so I just want to emphasize the principle again. I don't like the push on the new city council and without any sufficient information, and then
Yeah.
I just want to say we need to make informed decisions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not up just to push it through on the first few weeks or first few months. If we have 4 years for last city council to make some decision, and why we need to push something and in 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and as the new city council just started.
Yeah.
So that is my key points. I want this point keep cross again and again. And then I hope my voice as a minor voice and be heard at the city council.
No, absolutely, Councilor point is well taken, and but this is at the request of the council member to be brought forward earlier, right? So that's what it is. So, if we feel that at that time, as Councilor, Mr. Corbold mentioned, that if we feel there's not sufficient information for us to make a decision on, we can always refer that back to administration for more information at that time. Good. All right. Please vote.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
sorry, I can't click in if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick note. There have been conversations on this, so there is archives. Any counselor can request some information from administration in advance as well as to the work that has gone on to date. And so that is actually incumbent on counselors to proactively seek that information.
Got it. That's a good information.
And then the other aspect of this is that for new counselors, there may be multiple issues where they may not feel fully informed, but as Councillor Cartmel referred to, there have been potentially years of discussion.
Yeah.
And so if any counselor feels that they need more information, they can easily ask other counselors who have been part of the conversation or administration for that information. Just an FYI, because I understand Councillor Rice's concerns. I felt the same way when I started in my first term, but I quickly learned that there was an entire effort of multiple prongs of a multi-billion-dollar corporation that sort of needed decision points, and for me to sort of bring myself up to speed with those things.
Thank you, Councillor Paquette. That's a very good. That's a very good point. So please vote for this item to be referred back to November 22nd council meeting. Please display the vote. The vote is carried. Thank you.
Sorry, point of order.
Yep.
I thought that we weren't allowed to abstain. I thought that that was a default
Can you make the screen bigger? I hardly can read it.
because I've seen two abstains now, and my understanding was it's a default in the system that we can't take off the abstain, but we are not allowed to abstain unless we have some sort of fiduciary benefit or.
So who is abstained, sorry?
Abstained?
Did somebody abstain from?
Yes, yes.
I have a question. I cannot see the votes display on my screen.
So can you affirm, Councillor Rice, the vote? Can you?
I confirm it, but I am unable to see the votes display on my screen.
Okay, we'll get you some assistance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So Councillor Rice is not abstained, she's affirmed for the vote.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
No. I said I cannot see the votes display, but I did choose abstain.
Oh, you abstained from the vote, Councillor? You cannot do that. No, council members must either vote affirm the decision or oppose the decision. There's no provision under MGA for council member when they're present in the meeting to abstain. I think that is just a one click button in the system that is happened to be there. So if somebody from legal could please clarify what our obligations are when we're present in the council meeting or committee meeting.
Yes, I can, absolutely. So you can only abstain if you have a pecuniary interest.
Yeah.
And there's a specific set of procedures that have to be followed and that you would have to declare that interest and leave the meeting. So that's why the option is there, because it will occur on very rare occasions. But if you are present in this chamber, you must vote on a matter, yes or no.
So we can reconsider the vote, Councillor Rice, and then either you can vote in favor of the motion or you can oppose the motion.
I opposed.
So can that be noted? Madam Clerk, without reconsidering the vote, can we note that Councillor Rice voted against the motion to refer 5.1 back to council?
Just 1 second here. So we need to consider actually both votes. So Councilor
Okay.
Rice did abstain also on the vice chair vote, so we would need to reconsider both
Oh.
of those.
Can you somehow please make that, I need a bigger screen, I'm an old guy, can't see, I can barely read that, I don't know if you can, Councillor Rutherford.
I see it on my screen,
Yeah.
but it is very small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. If you could fix that, please, for old people. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so we have to reconsider the,
The vice chair vote?
So
okay.
I'll start
Should-
with a motion to reconsider that vote for election of vice chair.
Okay, so please vote on the reconsideration for the vice chair selection. So to reconsider, we have to vote yes.
Yep, so we have the votes.
Can you display the votes, please? Can you read it? Is it passed or not?
It is.
It is, okay. Good, thank you. Now we can vote on selecting the
Correct.
vice chair. Councillor Knack, can you move, please?
Yeah, so I'll move that Councillor Stevenson be elected as vice chair.
Okay. And that doesn't need to be seconded, right? Yeah, yeah. Please vote for Councillor Stevenson to be the vice chair of the executive committee. That is yes. Submit. Display the vote, please.
Oh, Councilor Rice, we're just waiting for your vote. Oh, you're a no. Okay, thank you.
Can you display the vote? That is carried. Can you,
Then I'll move reconsideration for the vote on item 5.1.
okay, item 5.1 to be reconsidered. Please vote.
We have the votes.
Display the votes, please. And that is carried, right?
It is.
Okay. Councillor Knack, can you please move for the consideration for 5.1?
Correct, yeah, I'll move that with the revised due date of the supplemental budget adjustment.
Okay. Please vote.
We have the votes.
Please display the votes.
It's carried.
Councillor Rice,
Has voted no.
okay, I got it. Okay, good. All right, that is carried. Okay, now we go to our first item on the agenda, which is 6.1. Do you have a brief presentation on this? Yeah,
We do, Mr. Mayor.
good, thank you.
I'll dive right in. I think you all know by now that I'm Katrin Owen, the DCM of Communications and Engagement. Today with me is someone you've met before, Mary Sturgeon, Branch Manager, Reputation and Brand, where citywide advertising sits, and somebody new who you may not have met before, Charity Dyke, Director of Brand Integration. Nancy Jacobson is also here, as she always is, to support us on legal matters. I would like to provide you with some context and information related to the city's approach to advertising that will hopefully help you better understand our proposal to pursue an outline agreement with Postmedia and why, in fact, this report is in front of you. Next slide, please. The city uses advertising to reach Edmontonians in a number of ways. We want to focus on two particular categories this morning. The first being general advertising, which is the broadest category of advertising done by the city and is the city's largest ongoing advertising expenditure and is managed by Communications and Engagement. Might be interesting for you to know that historically it was not managed centrally, and we have realized considerable cost savings and efficiencies by bringing that advertising spend to a centralized location. Generally, this advertising is in support of programs, services, or initiatives that we want to communicate broadly to Edmontonians or to a specific audience. The second type of advertising that is legislated by an act or bylaw from another order of government or the city itself is the second category that I want to speak about. This means that the city is required to advertise or provide public notification, and these requirements include certain conditions around how we must do that. For example, acts such as the Municipal Government Act and the Expropriation Act both provide direction to municipalities about public notification and specific requirements that we must meet. Advertising in general circulation newspapers was and is still a requirement within some of that legislation. I'll explain this more in coming slides. Next slide, please. Prior to 2017, the MGA, the Municipal Government Act, required municipalities to advertise public notifications in general circulation newspapers. In 2017, the Act was revised and provided municipalities with the opportunity to consider alternative advertising methods besides newspaper advertising. And with that change, the city passed our public notification bylaw in 2019. And this bylaw allowed the city to continue to have newspaper advertising as an option for public notification, but also include other methods, specifically the city's website and also posting notifications in the Edmonton Service Centre. Although provisions within the MGA for public notification have been modernized, there are still requirements in legislation like the Expropriation Act that prohibit us from transitioning away from newspaper advertising completely. So where advertising in a newspaper of general circulation is required, Postmedia, as the owner of Edmonton Journal and Edmonton Sun, is the only outlet that allows the city to meet our legal obligations. Next slide, please. With the passage of Public Notification Bylaw in 2019, the city started taking steps to align to these new requirements and options. To support the transition to a more digital, broad-reach approach, we've enhanced edmonton.ca to display planning applications by ward. Secondly, we are developing a public notification tool that will allow residents to sign up and receive push notifications about topics and services of interest. This will launch in phases starting in early 2022 to support the zoning bylaw renewal process. Thirdly, recognizing the zoning bylaw still required the city to provide public notification by newspaper, it was also brought forward for amendment in February 2021 to align with the public notification bylaw and provide more options. And fourthly, recognizing that the current public notification bylaw presents some challenges, that have been particularly experienced during the pandemic, it will be coming back to Council in December of this year with a refinement for your consideration. Next slide, please. In addition to the legislative advertising, general advertising makes up the majority of the overall advertising that the city does. This covers program and services-related advertising, and for reasons of efficiency and cost savings, is managed, as I mentioned at the outset, by our department, Communications and Engagement. This centralized process also provides flexibility to employ a variety of advertising methods and channels, and these include advertisements with traditional media, newspaper, radio, television, including in post media when necessary, paid social media advertising, roadside signs, direct mail, interior and exterior transit advertising, outdoor ads, including digital and static billboards. Next slide, please. This graphic helps depict how the post media and general advertising dollars are allocated. It shows the breakdown between the percentage spent with each. Nearly 72% is spent with outlets other than post media. And the next slide, please, shows you the same advertising breakdown for the past 3 years, estimated to December of this year. When you look at our total advertising spend over that 3-year period, which is the term of the current agreement, almost 80% of our advertising spend was done outside of the post-media agreement. And the next slide, please, is our final slide. In the current outline agreement and in the proposed new outline agreement that's in front of you, there is no minimum spend required. Over the 3 years of the current agreement, we've spent, in order to meet our legal obligations and our needs as a large entity with diverse advertising needs, we've spent approximately 1/3 of the value of the agreement. So you might be asking yourselves, why do you have such a big agreement in front of us? And the reason for that is the report is in front of you because it represents the best fiscal arrangement that we could negotiate. And we felt it was prudent to do just that. And we are happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Councillor Stevenson, you selected this item, and I do have some questions. I'm pretty sure other council members have questions too. We'll go to Councillor Stevenson first.
Thank you. And thanks for the presentation that provided some answers to some questions that I had in mind. So just to start off and just to be really efficient in my 5 minutes, can you confirm that we aren't doing any print notifications of the rezoning and development permit requirements? Have we stopped that practice with the changes to the MGA?
Charity's our expert on that. Go for it.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. We are still doing some advertising within post media for rezonings. However, we've started that transition. For example, development permits as of September are no longer advertised in post media, and we are starting to transition the rezonings as well, with sort of a projected date of transitioning those in early 2022.
Okay, that's great to hear. That seems like a great opportunity for cost savings, and really happy to hear that transition is underway. I think more strategically, as we talk about our sustainable procurement policy and our local procurement policy that's coming forward, understanding again the limitations of the legislatively required, that's really interesting about the Expropriation Act. But again, just wondering how that thinking has come into play when we're making those decisions, recognizing that post media doesn't have local ownership.
Yeah, a big part of this transition to which we've been referring is the deliberate and intentional efforts that we are making to support local, ethnic, and non-traditional media. And we are in constant conversations with those non-traditional media, and perhaps some of the more obvious ones that you might think about, those who are active on social media, are constantly in touch with us, and we're having ongoing discussions with them. And I think the fact that they didn't feel the need to come speak today speaks to the fact that our discussions with them have been fruitful.
That's wonderful. And just wanted to ask as well, and really applaud those efforts. That's excellent to hear. Have you also been reaching out to the communities? I know they have advertising opportunities in their community newsletters, which could be good opportunities to, again, support local and get the word out.
Absolutely. We do that in a couple of different ways. One, which we talked about during onboarding through council services, we do help you with editorial and advertising through those local outlets. But just to build on Catherine's earlier point, as part of our centralized advertising process that Charity leads, we're making a very intentional effort at looking at appropriate use of non-traditional and ethnic media. So it's something that we're focusing on really strongly and highly committed to.
Right. And just a final clarification, I think I know the answer to, but the sole source in no way is exclusive, that we still are able to purchase ad space from any other provider. It's just that the it's just related to how it's being procured, and there are no other outlets that can meet our statutory obligation.
That's correct.
Great, those are all my questions. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Rutherford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just ask a question related to the percentage? I love the presentation, and again, to Councillor Stevenson's point, it answered a lot of the questions I had, which wouldn't surprise me given your professional background. But with the percentage breakdown, what does that work out to as a dollar amount? Can you share that with us? So for example, on the slide where it says overall advertising spend 2020, it says post media 28.5 and general non-post media 71.5. What do those dollar amounts add up, equate to?
Mary and Charity have that. Our mics are very hot today. That's unusual. We'll get tech on that. Mary can translate those percentages into dollars for you.
Our spend in 2020 was 1.4 million, and that includes, Charity, correct me if I'm wrong about that, it includes post-media and non-post-media advertising. And that's the centralized budget that we control.
Are there other budgets that you don't control? Because I know, for example, when I worked with administration, so I don't know if it's changed since then, but major projects also had their own advertising budgets as well.
We have centralized those budgets. There are still some legacy examples that we're still in the process of centralizing in order to maximize efficiencies. But the bottom line is that we are centralizing those spends in order to maximize efficiencies. And it's still a work in progress, but we're pretty much there.
Yeah, in addition to the efficiencies, we want to make sure we have a real tight control of how that money is spent, so.
Perfect. And, you know, I really appreciated the report. I want to just echo something, though, because I think it's a really salient point that you made, and I want to confirm my understanding is correct, that even though we're doing if you say that the overall budget was 1.4, but we're doing the sole sourcing contract for 3 million over 3 years, what I'm hearing, though, is that there is no minimum that we have to spend every year. Like, we don't have to do 1 million per year with post media. It can be whatever amount we determine up to that cap.
That is absolutely correct, and it is the format of this proposal that enables us to be fiscally prudent.
And this contract, if I read correctly in the report, provides us an opportunity to get a discount that we would not have unless we had a minimum spend, typically, right? So we get a discount on print advertising that we wouldn't have, or we would have access to if it was over a dollar amount, but let's say we just want to do a one-off advertisement. It could cost more for that one-off advertisement without this contract.
Considerably more.
That's,
Yeah,
yep.
and we did look at, can you get a shorter term? Yes, but not with the discount.
That's what I also read. Perfect. And again, yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Councillor Knack.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for this presentation. It did really help. It answered a lot of questions. I just want to get a sense of how has our budget grown with non-traditional and ethnic media over the last few years? What's been that change in our budget? Or has it grown?
Councillor Knack, we aren't specifically allocating it right now to those areas, but it's something we're making concerted efforts on this year as we work on the centralized advertising process. What I can say is the advertising spend with traditional media, i.e. post media, has significantly decreased over the last number of years.
Okay. So I asked that question because, when I think about the conversation 3 years ago, I felt that leaving that conversation, we would have, that there might be a bit more of a dedicated strategy. And so it sounds like it's now going to be worked on, but I want to be honest that I thought that might have started 3 years ago when that last conversation happened. So I'm just wondering if you can provide some detail to us in the future of what our plan is to make sure, because I imagine our goal is reach, or rather engagement, not reach. We want to make sure we're getting people engaged in what we're doing. So
correct, and
yeah.
I don't want to leave you with the impression that that we're only just developing a strategy.
Sure.
When you consider the two biggest things that have happened in Edmonton over the last 3 years, the waste project and the bus network redesign, those are both examples of very highly targeted advertising campaigns in a range of media, including ethnic media, to really reach out to audiences in a very specific way. And I think it's important to underscore that advertising is only one of the mix of communication methods. And waste is a great example of how we had street teams going into neighborhoods, etc. So what advertising cannot do is talk back, right?
Yes,
and have a conversation. So it becomes an augmentation to a whole communication strategy that's multifaceted.
So when we're looking at that broader strategy then, and if we're sort of lumping this in together in an overall budget spend, which I think makes sense, having street teams is really valuable. What is the requirement of our street teams of that work to have people who speak different languages, who can make sure that folks who might be able to do sign language, is that a deliberate part of our street team strategy yet, or is that part of the next body of work?
I think it's fair to say that that would be the evolutionary next step for us. We're working on a whole translation strategy for the City of Edmonton digitally and otherwise. There's all kinds of new technologies that enable us to go into community without being able to speak the language, but still being able to communicate. There's new technologies that we're looking at. Yeah. And as a piece of that, having speakers of the language is desirable as well.
And so are we looking at, so in a community where maybe, pick community X, which generally community X will be English as the primary language, and then the secondary language will be any number of languages. But are we looking at that secondary language when we're advertising in a community and making sure that we're building out advertisements that's ideally trying to connect with that second highest language on the list?
Yes.
Okay. Now, so that means, that's that way we're having advertisements that are getting to somebody's hands, talking about, come out to this event, there will be somebody here who can, whether it's a technology solution to translate, whether it's an individual that can translate, that can bring those people in. So
that's part of the strategy.
Okay, good. I guess then my last piece is I'm wondering about getting a better sense of that, because I do still find that, and I found it again this last election campaign, of how many times I run into permanent residents, how many times I run into newcomers who who have actually said, oh, don't bother, I can't vote, and have such a language barrier up front that they feel like they don't even want to start the engagement process. So I'm not fully clear on how we're trying to address that, because I think that conversation started back long before even you were here. I remember probably year 1 or 2, we talked about having multiple languages on the city website. Now we're using Google Translate, which is fair, but I'm not sure how we're trying, what that plan of action fully looks like yet. And so I'm just wondering if there's a way to get, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a report, but even a memo that can
You bet.
get us to that point of a greater appreciation for me of what we're doing.
I think that would be a source of reassurance and insight for all of council if we were very clear about the strategy and how it's working.
Okay.
Happy to do that.
All right, thank you. I'm out of time.
Thank you, Councillor Knack. Just to follow up on Councillor Knack's questions, even though the presentation does answer some of the question, but does not give us the full picture of how much we're spending on non-traditional media, how much we're spending on ethnic media in advertising, right? So even though you gave us that you have 24% on post, then the rest is on the others. But it's very difficult to understand in like what that percentage is, and has that have those resources grown over time in non-traditional media? I don't get that sense out of this presentation.
We can happily drill down and give you those additional details.
So if you could give us a big picture on how where your vision is for for advertising, not only within the post media, but beyond post media to non-traditional, ethnic, and all that, right? So, and community-based media as well, right? And
A key feature of our orientation sessions has been that I think we've said numerous times to council that reaching diverse voices and being inclusive is a linchpin of how we want to do our business.
Yeah.
So absolutely, we can provide further detail on that if you wish.
Yeah.
But
so
it's
that'll be good.
You bet.
I am concerned that we're locking ourselves in for 3 years into this contract without having that big picture, right? So is there a way that you continue the legislative required work that is necessary, right? But maybe not do a 3-year contract, maybe do a shorter period contract, then come back to us with big picture, and then have more information that we can consider. Maybe at that time, we can look at whether we need to go for 3 years. That's one, right?
We could, if I may answer that, we could absolutely do that. We could have no contract at all. It's simply a matter of the rates would be different.
Oh, yeah, but I was under the impression that you need to advertise because of MGA requirements, and you need to have that flexibility.
That's correct.
Can we lock in 1 year at the same rate that we're proposing 3 years? Would be different rate, right?
Correct.
Okay,
It would be
got
a
it.
higher rate.
Okay, that's okay. And the other one is that even though the actual spend over the last 3 years is only 35%, but we lock in $3 million. So if we're only going to spend 35% of the $3 million, budget's being tight, right? Why would we have that much discretion within that amount of money?
Without getting into the specifics of the negotiation, the potential spend is what drives the rate, even though we don't use it.
Okay, so that all that $3 million could be spent over 3 years.
But there's no history of that, and it is highly unlikely, given our history and given our strategy to diversify, that we would ever avail ourselves of that capacity spend. It's there simply to drive the rate.
Yeah, but that's a huge that's a 35%, only 35 spend, then you are locking in another almost $2 million into a contract that you will never spend $2 million.
Only to secure a rate.
But that $2 million is locked in. That $3 million locked in. That $3 million cannot be used for anything else.
With no spending threshold whatsoever required.
Okay, I just need a little bit more clarity. I'll go to Councillor Jens. I just need to think about that aspect. Are we locking in $3 million over 3 years when we only know we may spend 35% or 40%?
All we're doing here is locking in a rate.
A rate, okay, but not the actual $3 million is not allocated to that category.
That's correct,
Okay,
Your Worship.
got it. Good. Thank you. Councillor Jens?
Thank you.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. Councillor Rice jumped on the board from committee. Sorry, Councillor Jans. I just want to make sure.
Thank you, Andrew, for that, because, yeah, Councillor Rice, go ahead. Yeah, yes. No, Councillor Rice, you must go first because you're a committee member.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. I think my question is already being asked by Mayor, and so I have no question right now.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. Councillor Jens?
I'm curious about the MGA requirement. If I read it correctly, there is a requirement that you must advertise certain things under a print daily. What constitutes a print daily?
I'm going to defer to Ms. Jacobson on that. She's been advising us throughout.
So it's a newspaper of publication circulating in the city. So it's not about a daily, it's about whether it has circulation throughout the city.
So does Post Media have circulation throughout the city?
It would qualify, yes.
Do any other outlet have that?
Not that we're aware of, which is why we're recommending a sole source.
So what is the readership, and I'm sorry, not readership, what is the actual amount of subscriptions? Because we could print our own newspaper here and deliver it to one neighborhood per city and have citywide circulation. Like, I haven't seen anything in the report talking about the actual subscriptions of print newspapers. So how do I know that it constitutes a print daily?
So we've been using these newspapers for a number of years, and they have met the standard for advertising. This is something that we've done and we've had to establish before, and Post Media has achieved that for us when we've published an ad in the Edmonton Journal.
What is the standard for advertising?
It is that we publish it at least once a week for 2 weeks in that generally circulating newspaper, where we must use newspaper advertising. But please keep in mind Ms. Owen's comments about we have other options available to us.
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering if the newspaper decides to just print to 12,000 households or 5,000 households. Like it is assumed that they are the citywide daily, but I don't have any subscription data to back that up. And at some point, it could dwindle to.
We have some of that if you'd like it.
We
have it right now if you'd like it.
That would be very helpful, I think.
Go ahead, Mary.
Councillor Jans, I have impressions for the Edmonton Journal from 2017 to fall 2021. It has gone from slightly more than 500,000 impressions among adults 18 plus to around slightly more than 400,000.
I'm sorry, impressions though are not print daily.
They are not. This is the data that we have.
So, Mr. Mayor, this is my concern with this report is where, like, the MGA requires us to have a print daily, but we're unable to say how many people are even receiving the print of the daily, and that to me is still a gap here. I mean, I think of rural Alberta, some of them do not even have print dailies, that they would be completely unable to meet this requirement.
The only issue that I think is truly germane here is that there is no other one.
I hear that. I'm wondering if Post Media goes under, stops printing, stops being able to fulfill that, then we would be unable to fulfill our obligations entirely, right?
And the provincial legislation would need to keep up with that and change, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, again, I wonder, well, so there's the questions around circulation and readership too. I just also want to acknowledge the awkwardness that as a politician here at this table, we're being asked to vote on a monetary contract with a business that has journalists and columnists who have the ability to write grapes or gripes about us for the next 1,441 days. So one could assume that, of course, that if we were to vote favorably or not favorably on this or comment on it, that this could also play into future editorial considerations, or the perception of that in the public. Oh, well, they're giving Councillor Jans a soft ride because he signed a $3 million deal. So that's also just uncomfortable.
I recognize that issue for public life, but in our experience, media outlets have been scrupulous about the division between editorial and advertising.
I just thought I would acknowledge that uncomfortableness for here.
Thank you, Councillor Jens. Councillor Wright?
Thank you. I understand this procurement process, and I'm just wondering, is there a formal procurement process for the for the digital and for other alternate advertising as well?
The only reason this procurement issue is in front of you is because of the threshold being higher than the city manager's delegated authority. So there wouldn't be anything else that would come in front of council from an advertising perspective, because it wouldn't meet that high bar threshold, which I know it seems counterintuitive. We have never met and likely will never meet, but it is a requirement that you see it given the potential.
Okay. So I guess it's more information gathering that I'm like further to what Councillor Knack was saying about, you know, reaching ethnic and other non-traditional. I was just wondering if there is a formal process, or if you just kind of
I think I may have misunderstood the direction of your question. My apologies. Our overall advertising strategy involves formal procurement for all outlets. We have support from an agency of record that specializes in media buying in order to meet our reach requirements. And we work closely with them to ensure that when we are spending taxpayers' dollars on advertising, that we're doing so with effect.
Okay. So we're not. So there is a fair and equitable way that digital and other formats can get the city's advertising beyond the legislative requirements of the print?
We have contractual obligations with a variety of media outlets for advertising.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Tang?
Thank you so much for this discussion. Clarifying indeed, and I understand that, you know, given the procurement aspect, you know, there is a lot of flexibility involved, and this is really around managing that pricing. I guess, you know, just wanted to build on some of the questions and discussions around the equity piece and, you know, recognizing other medium and media outlets. I think part of this is also the optics of sole sourcing to a major monopoly in Edmonton, and despite all the background work around strategy and translation and reaching out to ethnic media and community-based media, I mean, how do you plan to manage that?
The equity question?
The optics question.
The optics question.
Even though that, you know, 3 million, you know, and I hear you that you're building in a lot of them. You know, we don't have to spend it all, and it's really there for, you know, keeping so that we get the discount. But I think at the end of the day, the headline is that this is a sole source to a major monopoly in the city. And I mean, I think there's many points that Councillor Jans brought up that I can completely see. And even though this is part of our procurement process, you know, some of the feedback I've been getting from community-based media is that it's incredibly hard to compete, and oftentimes they feel very unseen by the city, by institutions. And I know that, you know, you all have relationships, that there's strategy, there's conversations going on. I think I worry about these processes that continue to undermine the work that we're trying to do for equity.
I think you absolutely nailed it when you called this a pricing strategy. That's exactly what this is. And your point about optics and equity is well taken. We feel we constantly have to balance fiscal prudence with that all-important GBA plus approach. And everything we do in our department, we put through that GBA plus analysis in order to drive equity. There is no doubt that the headline could be misconstrued here, but it's not a deal for $3 million. It's a pricing strategy.
Thank you. I think at the end of the day, I understand it. I just want to pinpoint those things out. Thanks.
So from a pricing strategy point of view, how much, if we don't approve this today, right, and give you some time to come back with some big picture where you're spending how much in ethnic media and other non-traditional media, how much advantage do you lose in pricing if this is not approved today? You still have flex. Can you have 3 months, 6 months that without losing advantage on pricing?
We've got the specifics on that, but I think we are now getting into the territory by giving you pricing issues of competitive advantage issues that may require us to have the conversation in private. Basically, the pricing is currently dependent upon those current conditions, but we can absolutely rethink it if it is the will of council.
Yeah, that's one. The other is that we want to lock in pricing to be as low as possible because we have to meet those MGA requirements as well. But following on Councillor Jan's question, if MGA applies to every municipality in Alberta, and some municipalities don't have dailies that they print, right? How do they meet MGA obligations? And why is this a requirement that we must advertise in a daily paper?
Because we have them.
So if you have them, you must.
Precisely.
That's the MGA?
And I would imagine, Ms. Jacobson can correct me if I'm wrong about this, I would imagine that the latitude that's extended to smaller communities is that they must advertise in their weekly publications if they have them, which ironically are often also owned by Postmedia.
Mayor Stohey, if I can just take a moment and clarify a couple points so there's a general understanding among council. So the MGA, which deals with most of what we need to advertise, gives us 3 options for advertising: direct mail, newspaper, or in accordance with our bylaw, if we have passed one, which we have. So a lot of small municipalities may have passed a bylaw which is allowing them to do that. And as you've heard today, we are transitioning towards that. What we're flagging for you is that there are some other pieces of legislation, like the Expropriation Act, that do not give us those alternative options. They require us to place that newspaper ad. So we need to, for fiscal responsibility reasons, as Ms. Owen has noted, it would be important in our recommendation is to lock in those rates for where we have absolutely no other choice, but continue to look at other options as permitted by the MGA.
So how do smaller municipalities or municipalities don't have dailies, how do they deal with expropriation obligations?
It's a very good question. They may not have the same issues, or they may not do as much expropriation. It may be done at a provincial level. Hard to say.
So they're, okay.
And they may be in a position to do direct mail in a fashion that is not exorbitant, given the size of their communities.
Yeah, because I would definitely like to have more information, but I also understand that if that jeopardizes your negotiation position to get the best rate possible, we cannot get that picture until we go into private. I don't know if there's a desire to go in private. We have other items to deal with this. I know. Huh? Yeah, because I really, I want to get a I want to get a good sense on that if there's a desire on part of committee to briefly go into private to get that information. Is that okay? Okay, so I'll go to Councillor, can Councillor Wright and Jens wait till we have that discussion? Is that okay? Okay, so
I don't need to. I spoke before Councillor Tang, so can either move me up the list or take me out.
So Councillor Knack, would you like to move that we go into private?
Certainly, I just need to know which section of FOIP
25.
25, okay, all right, perfect, I'll move that. We'll go into private, subject to section 25 of FOIP.
Yeah. Please vote to go into private.
We have the votes. It's carried.
Carried. Thank you so much. Still got need few minutes. we are in public, so we gotta wait a minute for the doors to open. Sure, yeah, go ahead, yeah. Okay. All right, we're back in public. Okay, who is on the list for speaking order? I know Councillor Rice, you have some questions, right?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So my question is, and Ryan, I heard my colleagues' discussion about the information. We need more information and for us to make informed decision. So my question is about, do we have enough time to bring this back to our next exact committee meeting and to discuss and to make a decision. And then by looking at the contract ending date is December 31st of 2021. So we still have like 1.5 months to make this decision. And then, so if there is no impact on the pricing side, I would like to give the motion and to move this decision and back to the next meeting.
So we have time to do that, but, you know, up subject to the will of council's agenda. I guess what I would simply ask, if that were the case, we'd want to be super clear today in terms of what more information you want, because I'm not sure what else you would need that's relevant to this decision. So, and I'm just asking, I just want to know exactly what information you want so that we can make sure we provide it if the committee agrees to delay it.
I would like a few information and for because this 3 years contract agreement started 2018. So I would like to say what's the deliverables and from the contract and how we measure that deliverables meet, and then from the contract manager perspective. And also, I would like to see the industry change trend. And because 3 years already passed, and right now technology is so advanced, I understand that we are moving the transition to the new direction, and I would like to see how that moving forward process impact this price and impact this contract with them.
So we do have some of those specifics here, if they're of value to you now?
So I do believe, and from like informed data-based, informed decision-making process, from myself, I feel more comfortable if I can give the proper vote and then back to next meeting. And otherwise, I think I feel like under the pressure and.
Happy to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Rice, thank you, Councillor Rice. Councillor Principe?
Hi, so I just wanted to clarify, the MGA requirement is either a print daily or a mail out?
Ms. Jacobson?
Or in accordance with the bylaw that we pass, yes.
Okay, so either one of those, okay. And I guess more cost-effective would be the print daily?
Given the size of our population, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Principe. So I see no further questions. I don't know, Councillor Rice, what were you thinking of referring this back to the next council meeting? For you to do that, you would have to make a motion and council would have to, or committee would have to vote on it, right? But in the absence of that, there'll be, if anyone willing to move the recommendation?
I'm happy to move the recommendation as is.
Okay. All right, so a recommendation is moved.
Point of order, I saw Councillor Hamilton indicated on the screen raising a hand. I'm not sure if she was trying to indicate through eScribe.
Councillor Hamilton, did you raise your hand to speak or to, ask questions?
I did. I'm sorry, I cannot get into eScribe right now. And I didn't want to interject. Thank you for that point of order, Councillor Jans. May I ask my question or make a recommendation, Mayor Sohi?
Yeah, motion is moved, so you can ask questions of the motion. Or?
So, given the, I think, fulsomeness of the discussion here, if you're going to refer it back, I would.
There's no motion. There's no motion on the floor to refer it
okay.
back.
All right. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right. Never mind. I misunderstood. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So anyone else on the? So we do have a motion on the floor I want to quickly speak to this. Thank you so much for providing the additional information to us, because that information was helpful in answering some of those questions that we have about, first of all, more clarity that this is a pricing negotiation. This is not a lock-in $3 million that you must spend on the contract, and the determination will be made based on the need of the corporation or the requirement of the MGA to spend whatever we need to spend. I think also it warrants that we have more information. I know Councillor Knack will have something on that later on. Like, what is our overall strategy on advertising? How are we engaging new platforms? How are we engaging non-traditional media? How are we engaging ethnic media in our outreach to communities, whether it's related to MGA requirements or general advertisement that we do on a number of projects that we undertake. So, yeah. So I don't know if anyone else want to speak to this. If not, then we can absolutely vote on the motion moved by Councillor Stevenson. So,
Point of order.
Yes.
So only committee members can vote?
Yes.
Anyone can ask questions. Can anyone debate as well?
That's a good question. Yes, you can ask questions on the motion, and I don't know if you can probably get non-committee members
So
can speak.
non-committee members can also debate, but they can't vote. They can say, I urge you
Yeah,
to vote one way
they
or the
can,
other.
They can speak, yeah. Are you? No? Okay, Councillor Rutherford?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to acknowledge the bind this puts us in terms of the optics. So I really feel like, as was to Councillor Principe's point, it's indicative of us to really clarify what it is we are approving here. So for me, just to break that down, we are approving here a fixed price rate for print advertising when it is required legislatively, or when we feel that the experts feel that the audience would be best served by being reached through print media. We in no means have to go above a certain threshold or to a maximum of 3 million. And we as a council have all voiced our concerns today about the need to make sure that we are supporting local media outlets and reach to diverse audience through multimedia facets for advertising and other communication methods. So I just really felt it was important to speak to that today, to put that out there in terms of what we are actually voting on. And so that was the statement I wanted to make, and I appreciate the information that administration brought forward to help clarify that. And I also want to say, in the budget, I'm looking forward to seeing the budget breakdown from the communications in the past, and annually that will start to show a decrease in that reliance on the print budget as we go.
Thank you, Councillor Rutherford. Councillor, I saw you. Okay, got it. So we have a motion on the floor, so please vote on the recommendation.
Sorry, I just saw Councillor Paquette's name come up on the speakers list.
Okay. Councillor Paquette.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just, I was just going through the bylaw, and maybe I've missed it. I just don't see exactly where. Maybe administration could point this out to me just for comfort. Where newspaper ads are required for legal notices.
Ms. Jacobson?
That's not in the bylaw specifically, that's in the MGA, and if you'd like a specific reference, it's section 606.
Okay, all right, so that's my mistake. I was looking at our bylaw, so I'll take a look at that in the MGA. Okay, that's it. Just need that clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paquette. So please vote.
Just waiting for Councillor Rice.
Were you able to?
Carried 5-0.
5-0?
Yep.
Thank you so much. The motion has passed. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I have the subsequent if you're ready.
Yes, Councillor Knack, go ahead.
Thank you. We can just put it up on the board. Just to document the request for the memo that I think we heard is already going to happen. So the administration provides City Council with a memo on the city's advertising strategy and how it addresses the use of non-traditional and ethnic media. And just quickly introducing it, I just want to, while sometimes while we're doing meetings, there'll be, administration will say, we'll get that information to you. I'd like us to be in the habit of documenting that. And we don't always have to request a report to Councillor Stevenson's earlier point because that is a longer and more time-consuming process. So that's why I've only requested a memo. If that memo comes back and if we'd like to take additional action at any point in time, a member of council could then make a notice of motion. So this is both a little bit of education and why I think it's important just to get this. It also means that anything that they're going to share with us that can be public will be made public. The memos are documented on the city website, so people will have access to that information if needed. Again, based on if there's certain pricing things or anything like that, private things can't be, but just wanted to make sure you have that. So I thought I'd just make sure this is clear that we'll get that information in a memo. Thank you.
Can you think this will cover local media as well? Can we add local?
Yeah, sure. Happy to use it as a non-traditional local and ethnic media. I see ethnic media. That's my own typo, probably.
Non-traditional, local, and ethnic media. Good. Good.
I do want to be ethical, but yeah.
Good. Okay, Councillor Jans.
That was my question as well too about local procurement and local ownership in particular.
Yeah, so the word local will cover that.
Yeah, and again, so this the councillors requesting a memo. Is this debatable now? Or is this just, are you making kind of like a councillor inquiry? Because can anybody request a memo, or I just want to clarify process?
So committee, if this passes, committee will be requesting a memo. That's my understanding, right? So it's not, this would no longer be an individual council member's request. It will be committee's request.
So I'm assuming then that any member of the committee can request a memo, but non-voting members of the committee cannot request a memo. They could suggest it and find a favorable ally, but it's again only then questioned or it can be debated by all, questioned by all, but voted on only by members of the committee to request a memo of a committee.
Yeah, and that can happen at any committee.
So if the committee said, no, we don't want this memo, but Councillor Knack still wants the memo, can Councillor Knack say, fine, I'm making a council inquiry as to this point?
Yeah, that's a very deep process issue.
I guess
you could, yeah.
I would also say that we get asked just over the phone from councillors for memos all the time.
Yeah.
And when we get that verbal request over the phone, we reply with a memo.
Yeah.
And we send that memo to all mayor and council. So certainly this motion is easy to action, but we do this all the time just based on phone calls or discussions in hallways to make sure you get all the information that you want.
From a process point of view, I think we many of us are new, so we have so many process-related questions. I think for the better use of other council members' time as well, I would suggest, Councillor Jans, is that these questions can be asked offline to administration to better understand the process.
Certainly, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, all right. So please vote on the request for memo. This would not be a request for report, request for a memo, right? Okay. Okay, where is it?
We have the votes. It's carried 5-0.
Please display the votes. It's carried?
Yep.
Good, thank you so much. We invented a new category now today, request for memos. Cool. Saving you time and money. Okay, we have one more item, 7.1. This is the engagement with Homeowners Association as city building partners. information requested by Councillor Hamilton through an inquiry. You need a minute, Mr. Smythe?
Mr. Mayor, we do have a very short presentation.
Okay. Are you ready to make that presentation?
It's just a verbal presentation.
Oh, is it verbal? Okay.
We are.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, members of Executive Committee and other members of Council, this morning we have David Jones. David is our branch manager of Community Standards and Neighborhoods. And also for the short presentation, we have Phil Harrott. Phil is the Director in Parks and Road Services in City Operations. And because the city's relationship with homeowner associations does touch a number of departments, we also have Stephanie McCabe here, Deputy City Manager of Urban Form and Economy, and colleagues from her branch, from the Planning and Environment branch and the Development Services branch. And also from Integrated Infrastructure Services, we have some staff from that department as well, and also from our legal services. So to our brief presentation. Today we are here responding to Councillor Hamilton's inquiry made in the spring for information on how and to what extent the city engages homeowner associations as city building partners. City of Edmonton partners with and provides a range of services for homeowner associations, including supporting the establishment of the association, developing parkland infrastructure, enhancing maintenance, beautifying park spaces, and providing licensing and funding for community events and initiatives. As the number of homeowner associations increases, administration is continually reassessing the way in which it partners with these associations to enhance and maintain parkland and amenities, increase opportunities for animating public spaces, and build stronger relationships with the broader community. These opportunities do support our key corporate business plan objectives related to recreation and culture, community development, and people partners and relationships. I'll briefly pass the presentation over to David Jones, who is here online. David.
Thank you. Homeowner associations are nonprofit organizations, but are private in that only the property owners in a defined area are members. Although homeowner associations are private in membership, there are opportunities for them to provide activities and events that are for the public benefit, including partnering with other similar organizations. As nonprofit organizations based in neighborhoods, there is also the opportunity for homeowner associations to partner and be supported by existing city processes and services, including funding for neighborhood events through neighborhood services, community funding, and neighborhood engagement funds, being supported by city liaisons through the park and facility development process in enhancing common areas with benches, trails, gazebos, and community gardens, and even supports in accessing licenses for parkland and road-based events such as food truck festivals or a winter park festival and snowbank rink. Neighborhood resource coordinators, who are assigned to every neighborhood, can recommend engagement opportunities, link homeowner associations to broader networks, and support in building capacity for the benefit of the neighborhood and community development. I'll now pass the mic over to Phil Harrott to address the parks operations and partnering opportunities.
Thank you. In addition to community development opportunities, homeowners associations have the ability to enhance basic services and amenities provided by the city for the benefit of neighborhoods. These enhanced services can include grass cutting, landscaping, increased garbage collection, and maintaining horticultural beds. In relationship with the homeowner association, support service delivery in a number of neighborhoods throughout the city. The homeowners association can link into parks through 311, or the neighborhood resource coordinator can refer them to our area. Our parks operations area would then work with the Homeowners Association to establish an enhanced level of service and partner through a maintenance agreement. We are able to provide information or support of trail maintenance and other operational enhancements to park spaces. This partnership results in beautifying a number of neighborhoods and results in an increased level of service that administration is not in a position to fund. Thank you, and we'd be pleased to take your questions.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I'll go to questions, and this is, okay, Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you. Thanks very much for the presentation. I really appreciated the GBA Plus analysis in this report, particularly highlighting classism and perceived inequalities. So just wanted to make a note that I thought that was very well done. So just so I'm absolutely clear, the Homeowners Association hired the city to undertake that enhanced maintenance work. Is that correct? Or do they hire private contractors?
I think we'll let city operations to weigh in on that question, Councillor. Phil?
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Councillor. It's a combination of both. There are some historic examples where the city's contracted to do it, but through those maintenance agreements, the neighborhoods and homeowners associations can contract private contractors to do that work.
Okay, and when it is the city, I mean, do we ever look at that as a potential revenue stream, or it's typically like a cost-neutral approach?
We are looking into that program and just how it would work across the city. So at this time, it's relatively a cost-neutral approach.
Great, and just a clarification too around when homeowners associations receive city funding for different programs or activations, is there a requirement that those events be accessible to all residents of the community, not just members of the homeowners association?
We have Chantel Shannon, our Director of Neighborhood Services, online as well, I believe. Chantel, are you able to weigh in on that one?
Yes, absolutely. We would only fund activities and events that are open to everyone.
Great, thank you for that confirmation. And just a final question of information for me. Are all new neighborhoods set up with a community league, or what's that process for a community league to be established in a new neighborhood? Is it community initiated, or did the city do it as a matter of course?
Again, I think Chantel would have some details she could relay, Councillor.
Sure, thank you. Yes, the city has land set aside for community league licensed areas. Not all of those are currently developed, and the city, through the neighborhood resource coordinators, will work with the community and the Edmonton Federation of Community Leagues to help the community come together and establish their community league. It sometimes takes a couple of years, but we do also provide funding to help them through that initiation phase until they get firmly established.
Great, thank you so much. Those are all my questions.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you. And thank you for pulling together this inquiry. Like Councillor Stevenson, I appreciated the GBA Plus analysis in terms of the discussion of equity. The reason I made this inquiry in the first place was because there was some, I would say, tension between communities in the spring on the expected maintenance in their neighborhoods, especially as it related to turf management and waste pickup, parkland waste pickup, I should be clear, and what the city sort of provides as a standard of service. And some of them were looking for a opportunity to broach an agreement, create new relationships so that they could maintain those amenities to their standards. So it looks like from this inquiry, those are sort of conversations that you're initiating, and you're starting to make the public more aware of the ability to sort of get into those agreements. What has your uptake to date been on that kind of those kinds of partnerships?
Phil, it's mostly about the maintenance standards. Are you okay to answer that question?
Thank you. I'll start and just say around the maintenance standards and stuff like that. In the communications plan, we work with our peers in communications to create the parkland care management plan that should clear up a lot of communications for Edmontonians and what those service levels are. That started this spring, late this spring. So we will continue to do that and improve on that. And as far as the uptake in those maintenance agreements, I'll ask Nicole Fraser to answer that question.
Sure. Thanks, Phil. So with budgetary pressures that operations and the city in general has had due to the pandemic over the past couple of years, we've noticed that there's been an increase in inquiries from homeowners associations and other organizations interested in entering into these agreements where groups want to provide enhanced services on parkland. And so I don't have an exact number off the top of my head, but I can just say in general, it has increased both for both options that Phil described before about the city or groups providing enhanced services.
And that's great. I have probably 2 rounds of questions on this, but I kind of want to cut to the chase, which is that this strategy seems to still be evolving. And as it says in the inquiry, I guess I'm looking for what our next touch point on this issue can be, because I see Councillor Cartmell's on the board. This came up a lot in relation to naturalization, and I'm absolutely not trying to relitigate or have that conversation today. I think we're going to have that conversation in January. But I don't want to lose the thread on this conversation about forming partnerships because of those budgetary considerations, and what I see as an opportunity to sort of offset some of the pressures that we're feeling at the very local level in terms of maintenance. So maybe Mr. Smythe, could you tell me when we're going to pick up, or what's our next opportunity to pick up this conversation, or see action or check in on sort of how this is evolving?
My first comment, and then colleagues can weigh in, is that we certainly have been studying this internally between the 3 or 4 departments that have some touch points here, and that we can reconvene internally and then communicate sort of a way forward back to council. And I do think doing that through a memo, and then if there's questions that come out from that, then it can be at a committee. And I would look at sort of before the summer kind of thing, is sort of that second quarter perhaps, that we could commit to bringing back that in, or through a memo back to council in terms of what does that look like going forward. And as Nicole indicated and others, there certainly is a growing number of these kinds of organizations, and sort of it has been a little bit, each one is kind of unique in terms of our connections. So what does that look like going forward?
And I appreciate that. I'm running out of time here, but I'm wondering if a memo before summer might be too late. We started to get inquiries on this in March of last year in my office. So I think the naturalization report is coming either in March, or I know it's scheduled to come in Q1. I'm wondering if it would be, if we could ask to, I'm going to say either refer or bring back an update on these discussions sort of adjunct to that naturalization discussion.
I think that would work from our end, Councillor. I don't have the date off the top of my head as to when that's coming, but we can certainly provide a progress report in terms of what work has evolved at the same time as that report is coming back to council or committee.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Cartmell.
Thank you. So, picking up where Councillor Hamilton left off, and I want to narrow the conversation a little bit. I had a lot of complaint from HOAs that have drainage ponds within their bounds. I have several that wanted to enhance the upkeep and maintenance of the spaces around those ponds, that either formally had an agreement with the City of Edmonton that they could not renew, or they could not find a way to penetrate city administration and enter into such an agreement. So understanding that there's a bit of an intersection here with naturalization, is there a process by which an HOA can get into a maintenance agreement soon, and not at next summer, but well in advance of that? If the essence of our service levels is going to be zero maintenance around ponds, can an HOA take that from zero to whatever level they want to simply by entering a maintenance agreement? And if yes, then how? And if not, then why not?
Again, I think back to Phil and Nicole.
I can speak to that. So the process for an HOA to contact the city to enter into an agreement is to contact the city through 3-on-1, or their NRC can refer them to the Parkland Management Team in city operations if they're already talking with their NRC.
Okay, so can I just interrupt you right there, Ms. Fraser? I'm sorry, but 311 was ineffective in these just about universally. And I don't know that the HOAs even know that NRCs exist. Right? These are not like community leagues where there's a monthly executive meeting necessarily. So if the answer is connect to the NRC, then what is the next question is, how do they do that? Yeah. Who is the NRC?
I can also speak to some communication improvements that we're working on currently that would help answer that question. So we are working on an updated website for not just maintenance agreements, but all types of parkland permitting, licensing, maintenance agreements, so that this information about how to contact the city and how to contact the teams directly that provide which type of permit or agreement can be made available publicly and to internal or external stakeholders. So we're aiming to get that up by the end of this month. And once that is up, then HOAs or any other group should be able to see exactly who they need to contact and how they need to contact them.
And will that allow HOAs, and again, I'm quite focused on the drainage ponds because that is, well, that's all I heard about. Mm-hmm. Will this process and will these communication pieces be in place early enough to allow maintenance agreements to be put into place with the city ahead of the next growing season?
So specifically around naturalization, and some of this information can be seen in attachment 1, which is a sample of homeowners' enhanced maintenance guidelines and responsibilities. Attachment 1 shows the options that HOAs could enter into for an agreement. It doesn't mean that they have to do all of those things. It depends on what they're interested in providing as enhanced services. Right. There is a section that talks about naturalized areas, including stormwater management facilities, and information on the direction that those stormwater management facilities were starting to be naturalized even more in 2020, which follows the city's landscape standards for those areas. So we do allow through a maintenance agreement assistance with weed control through mechanical means, as well as if they're interested in enhancing shrub beds, on the borders of the naturalized areas, that can also be worked into a maintenance agreement. Tree and shrub pruning and planting are options as well. And we also have volunteer programs that the HOAs could get involved with, specifically for trees in those areas. But mowing is something that is currently limited in the naturalized grass areas because we do have, environmental goals, climate change goals, tree planting goals that we're trying to meet with naturalization as one method for that. And so we want.
What I'm hearing you say is that we're not going to allow them to mow in areas that were previously mowed.
Not completely. That's the practice.
Okay, so we made that decision arbitrarily without any input or engagement. Is there an opportunity to revisit that decision? Because naturalization is not just stopping mowing the grass, but that's essentially what we're doing in a lot of these areas.
So you're correct. Naturalization is not just stopping mowing. There's also weed control as well as potential future options for tree planting or shrub planting in these areas. Now, the stormwater management conversions that happened in 2020 contribute to and align with updated landscaping standards for these areas, as well as the city plan, ensuring we have a healthy, climate resilient city for future generations. But beyond the benefits to the environment and public, these conversions were also part of the council-approved budget reductions as the city continues to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. So we're considering environmental, social, and economic changes here that administration had to apply pretty quickly when the pandemic started.
And just for clarity, Councillor, the naturalization report is coming back on March the 8th, so we could sequence this report for that same meeting where both reports would begin to, or not begin, would address the issues you've just raised.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Cartmel, and thank you for that answer, Mr. Smythe. Councillor Tang. We are running out of time, but we'll
Sorry,
see.
point of order. Would it be Councillor Rice first because she's on committee?
Councillor Tang is not on the committee? No. Oh my God, so I'm sorry. My bad. Councillor Rice. Thank you, Councillor Rutherford. I should have.
Thank you, but don't worry.
No.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hamilton, to brought this item for us to discuss. And this is something I would like to see more improvement from public service perspective. And so also I would like to say what I heard, the concerns and from the community is the same issue and Councillor Cartmel brought up. So I would like to say that revisit and for that decision as well. So because the questions, concerns, and brought to me and from my word is the same as Councillor Cartmel brought up. I would like to say that's a point first. And then second, from what I heard, there are lots of confusion and in the community between HOA services they provided and city services, standardized services. And then many residents may not have that clear information and then which area is city services, which area is HOA support. I don't know from communication perspective, is there any way we can increase that public awareness and then to help them and to understand, and so this type of services and in some issue happened and where they go to looking for assistance and help.
Certainly, point taken, Councillor, in terms of that broad understanding of the community, in terms of the different models, if you will. We can perhaps address that when we come back, if we're going to commit or get directed to come back in March in terms of raising the public's awareness and what that would look like. Because nothing in front of mind right away, but certainly we can explore that over the next couple of months.
Yes, specifically in some new area, some new developed area, and then it's really confusing even for myself. And some in the neighborhood, and even there is boundary, and some houses is under HOA, some houses don't, and even themselves and confused. And one for this part, we can go to that community league services, or this part we have to go to HOA. It's really confused for that. I just try to figure out is there any better way, and we can support them and help them at least not add the extra the frustration to the residents, and in terms the basic maintenance services and even basic community activities.
No, fair point. Certainly the Community League and maybe perhaps Edmonton Federation of Community Leagues would have a lens on that question as well to differentiate between the two models basically.
Yeah, in the same neighborhood, yes.
Same neighborhood, right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rice, and my apologies. I'm used to the old system where council committee members sat together with each other, so thought I gave honor to Councillor Tang to be part of the committee. So, Councillor Tang, you can go now.
I'm cognizant that we are at noon already, so I won't have any extensive questions, but I do just want to pick up something that Ms. Shannon said in response to Councillor Stevenson's question around access. Well, I think in theory, programs through the HOA are accessible by general community members, but in my experience, and this is a quite new thing in my ward that I'm learning lots about, is that sometimes the homeowner association sits on properties that are within gated area that is accessed by membership only. And, that includes lake access, sometimes in my area, playground in Spray Park, that kind of stuff. And I know the dynamic is quite challenging, and, and I really appreciate this report because I had so many questions about homeowner association myself. And certainly some of the question that Councillor Rice brought up around communication is something I consistently saw, and not just city service and homeowner association, but also developer service, and even homeowner individual responsibilities that people have, general confusion about, and hope there's partnerships and work there to continue that, as I would imagine you do with other community leagues too. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks for that feedback, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Tang. Councillor Wright?
Hi, thank you. I've had this concern brought up while campaigning as well, and working with the Community League as far as the naturalization and the stormwater management. And I'm just wondering, is it something, so the community leagues can follow this same process as the homeowners associations?
Yes.
Go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah, community leagues, any external organization can enter into a maintenance agreement, any formal external organization. So we have community, for example, even maintenance of community gardens, they're often under the umbrella of a community league, and we have agreements for those spaces as well.
And are there any grants available to the community leagues to help support this initiative?
Specifically community gardens or maintenance in general?
The maintenance.
I'm not aware of any, but I don't know if in citizen services, if you are aware of grants related to maintenance. Shan or Chantil?
There are no grants that we have that are specific to maintenance, but some of the licensed lands that community leagues are on is maintained by the city. If that land is open enough that the city equipment can get in there easily. Otherwise, the community league is responsible for maintaining it.
Okay. And I would also like to know how we could direct people to set up a homeowners association around these storm ponds.
Again, if they reach out to their NRC, that would be one way to start it. And 311 has a list of who the NRCs are for each of the areas. So people can find out through that venue as well. And homeowner associations initially are actually set up by the developers. So that might be a point of communication there as well.
Okay, so that would be for the larger development rather than just the small area that surrounds the storm ponds? Okay.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you. I'm conscientious as well that you're over time. And I think Councillor Knack's going to make a motion to help to continue this discussion as it relates to specific service provision at that March 8th discussion. But something I don't want to lose today, something that comes up in a lot of conversations with HOAs is that we send out notifications around zoning and sort of area redevelopment issues, planning issues to community leagues. And I believe that is in our bylaw or it's in our policy on how we communicate. However, in some communities where they don't have a community league set up yet, or the community league is either not engaged or not geographically relevant, as has happened, they end up being in, I'm going to say, a big gap area in terms of communication around those planning amendments. And so I'm curious, sort of, do we have a strategy for including the HOAs in the notifications around planning, or have we contemplated that?
Yeah, great observation, Councillor Hamilton. And, we constantly struggle with trying to get all the information out. And even community leagues are a bit of a challenge because they don't necessarily represent the entire neighborhood. Ms. Petron, can you weigh in if we've contemplated HOAs in our circulation?
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Hamilton, for the question. As you know, the Municipal Government Act or the zoning bylaw dictates where we need to do the notification, which is surrounding property owners, community leagues, and business improvement areas. We are working through the zoning bylaw renewal to look at how we can notify others, including renters as another stakeholder that doesn't often receive these types of notifications. And looking at other tools in terms of opting in type notifications that you can do online. We do recognize that people or property owners that receive a notice can highlight it to their homeowners association. We will take feedback through the land development process. We capture it in the What We Heard report that goes to council, as well as share any information that we have. But the challenge with the difference between homeowners association is that we have no central database of who to contact, whereas the community leagues, that information is facilitated by the Edmonton Federation of Community League.
So if I'm to understand correctly, there's the requirement to notify community leagues, is that our policy or is that the MGA?
It's the zoning bylaw, so ours.
So that's us. So that could be amended pursuant to the other, sort of satisfying the other challenge here, which is that you don't have a central registry of HOAs, but that does not, but they're all, I guess the flip side of that is that they all have to be registered under the Societies Act or the HOA Act or something. They all have to be registered provincially as a nonprofit. So they are a society under provincial legislation. So it's there is a way.
We lost you, Councillor Hamilton.
Sorry, my mic cut out there. What did you miss?
I think, Councillor Hamilton, we can take that back and report back through the zoning bylaw renewal on the notification and the approach there.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that because I could, and maybe we can connect offline, Ms. Petra. And there are some areas, at least in my area of the city, where there has been some pretty big gaps, and it's led to some sort of heartache along the way. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Knack.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think just based off what we heard, we're going to do a motion to refer this report back to March 8th. I know we don't like to tie it to, that was the date of the naturalization report. Perfect. Yeah, we don't like to tie it to other reports, so I'll just say the date, March 8th, with a clear intent that those two reports will come together, and so if for some reason something were to happen, they'll...
Yeah. So we're referring it back, referring it back to be brought back tied to that March 8th report?
Correct. On March 8th. We won't specifically reference the naturalization report, but we'll...
Okay.
It is understood. And that normally in a referral motion, we would like to itemize some of the items, but I think administration has heard pretty clearly what needs to come back. So I don't think we'll get into recognizing our time. I will maybe break our own rule of not specifying what we'll refer it for.
Okay, so we're referring it to March 8th, right?
Correct.
Okay, so please vote on referring this item to March 8th. Can you conclude me as affirmed, sorry, I can't vote here for some reason. Oh, here, it appeared, here you go.
We have the votes.
Can you display the, carried? Good, thank you so much. All right. No motions pending, private reports, none. Notice of motions or motions without customary notice, none. We are adjourned. Thank you.